Hello and welcome to the Health Source podcast, your source for all things health, wellness and lifestyle inspo. I'm your host, Beck Russell, health and life coach and the author of Life in the Soul Lane. Through conscious conversations, our aim is to inspire and empower you to live your most well, happy and vibrant life. If you're ready to elevate your well-being, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the Health Source podcast. Today's episode is a conversation with Dr. Marny Lishman, and we are celebrating and chatting all things Crisis to Contentment, which is her new book that has just been published, which is talking all things how to move through midlife with a bit more ease and grace. Dr. Marny Lishman is a health and community psychologist, mindset coach, author, keynote speaker, and media commentator. A nurturer at heart who ran a successful private practice in Western Australia for over a decade, Marny brings with her the valuable knowledge and experience of the vastness of the human condition and brings it to her powerful learning and development experiences. From running large wellness programs in organizations, professional development in schools, lunch and learns in small workplaces, to keynote conference presentations, Marny entwines the philosophy and practices of positive psychology, as well as her passion for prevention, into a wide array of settings. Marny arms her audiences and clients with the psychological tools to increase their own psychological capability, adaptability, and flexibility to fit in with today's fast-moving and uncertain world. Although this book is written for those of us moving through midlife, the wisdom and the lessons and the learnings and the opportunities that can present ourselves when we're going through these hardships or these times of crisis in our life are relevant to each and every one of us, and we talk about that in this conversation. And we also talk about the ways in which we can really turn these harder times in our lives into opportunities for growth and to be able to create a little bit more of a more aligned and happy and content life for us. So this is such a wonderful conversation. Marny's got so much experience and wisdom to share with us here in this episode. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Marny, and we're talking all things crisis to contentment. Marny, welcome to the Health Source podcast.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining me today to talk all things your new book, which I have here, Crisis to Contentment. And I've been reading your book, and I was just saying to you off air that it's so funny yet so practical, and everyone from all age groups, I'm sure, can take little drops of wisdom from your book. So I'm really excited to dive a little bit deeper with you today. But before we dive into that, Marny, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about yourself, and I wanted to know what are 3 things that you do in your life to keep yourself feeling really happy and healthy?
Oh, I think the main 3 things that I do to keep myself healthy and happy, I think the first one is exercise. I think that's a big one for me, just personally. Big one for me, but also as a psychologist, I think it's crucial that we exercise. So I do a lot of walking, I do Pilates and more walking. And I think getting out in nature is a big one. So I like to get out of my office quite a bit throughout the day, get outside, get a little bit of sunlight and get around some green and blue space. So that's big. And I think just being around people. I'm a bit of an introvert. So, I do have a tendency to spend probably a lot of time by myself, also as a small business owner. So purposely spending time with family and friends and getting out there, I think is, crucial for wellness.
I can totally relate to all 3 of those points because I can really vouch for exercise and movement, like whatever feels good for us, and getting out in nature, like that's just such a grounding force for me as well. And also being a fellow introvert, just making sure that we do spend those beautiful connection times with those in our lives that we care about. So there are 3 really beautiful ones to share for us to start with.
Excellent.
Now, as I said, we are here today to talk all things Crisis to Contentment, which is your new book. And it's all, I mean, it really is written for, I guess, middle-aged people with the focus in mind. But like you said, throughout the book, we go through these little crises throughout our whole life, don't we? Like sometimes we'll
Yes.
have like a quarter life crisis in our 20s and 30s, and then we're,
Exactly.
a little bit older and sort of thinking about our life that's gone past already, I suppose. And so this really is a book for everyone. But right at the start, in the introduction of the book, you share this story about Ben Affleck, and he's photographed out the front of this building having a cigarette break and just looking very frustrated. And I thought this was hilarious. He probably didn't think so at the time,
No.
but you're using it as an analogy to be like, the older we get, the more I can relate to this shot of Ben Affleck. So I'd love for you to kind of unpack that for us a little bit. And why do you think that happens? And also, what do you think's going on for Ben Affleck in that photo?
Oh, you should be happy, really, shouldn't you? I had that photo saved on my phone, and there's sometimes people, how you muck around with your friends a little bit, and if someone has a request of me, sometimes I'll just return it with that photo because it expresses so much of what I'm feeling. But, to your point about, this book is about midlife, but I think it just applies to all adulthood. And I didn't want to focus on midlife crises per se in the book. I wanted to talk about all the different crises that we feel throughout our adulthood. So that could be any age, really. But I think what I find when I'm working with people, and I'm also finding this of myself, as I move into, I guess, the window between 40 and 60, when there's so much change going on, that I feel, and my clients feel, really, we've got a lot on our plate. We've got so many roles that we have, lots of hats that we wear, huge expectations placed on us. There's just so much going on. And I think also along with that, there's lots of kind of physical changes, emotional changes, where there's global changes, and all of that is a mixed bag of everything, isn't it? And I think we're reacting to that a lot emotionally. So I think as adults in modern times, we're tired, we're a little bit more grumpy, we're slowing down a little bit, but in that is we're like, what's this all about? Who even am I? Have I lost some of the things that I of who I was before? So I think that's what's happening. And I think, I think that irritability and the grumpiness, as we see in Ben's photo, it's like, that kind of feeling. Favorite photo ever.
It's very expressive, isn't it?
It is.
And so you've mentioned a few things there, like, we've got responsibilities as we age with potentially children and parents, and I guess financial pressures and changes with our health and our body. Are these some of the common things that you see in your work with your clients?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So I mentioned before, lots of different changes are happening, and I think a lot of us are actually reacting to that. And I think and this is the thing, is that, we've always had adults, haven't we? I mean, our ancestors were adults, but I just think in modern times there's so much more going on for us. So we've just got so much more on our plate, and we've got a lot of us have got kids, we're looking after parents at the same time. Plus, everything's so expensive these days. So a lot of us are working full time on top of that. We've got so many devices attached to us, so we're absorbing and fusing with the trials and tribulations of the world around us and what's going on. So I think when I'm seeing clients and when I'm working with them, they're chronically stressed, so they're reacting to that, but it's not shifting, so it's sticking with them for a long period of time, because they often don't have time to navigate that or practice that self-care or learn how to have crucial conversations with people to actually alleviate some of that pain. So a lot of people are burning out. And I think a lot of career changes, a lot of relationship breakdowns, and a lot about, and like I mentioned before, like, who am I? Like, kind of that scrambling for that identity. I remember who I once was. I don't know who I am anymore because I don't even have time to think about me because I'm just helping everybody else? And do I want to continue this going forward, or is there a calling for me to be a better version of myself?
Absolutely. And you mentioned there was a stat that you shared in the book that I think it was 47.2 years of age is the
Yes.
most unhappy time in our lives, according to this research. And so I found that really interesting because, like you said, it's this funny age where we've already experienced, so much of life, so much has
Mm,
happened. We've all had our own unique experiences, obviously. And I guess it is this matter of us arriving here all of a sudden, I guess it
yes.
seems, and be like, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? So I
Yeah.
guess rather than allowing it to turn into this big crisis, I suppose we can use it as a really beautiful opportunity just for reflection, and be like, okay, this is where I am now. This is where I've come from. And where is it that I want to go? Because I have this beautiful opportunity right now to craft, the rest of my life from here.
Exactly, exactly. And you mentioned the term beautiful opportunity, and that's what I really want to turn this into, because the thing is that in the moment people are feeling anything but it's a beautiful opportunity. They're actually grumpy, irritated, like absolutely exhausted. Yeah, it's almost like the opposite of feeling like this is a great opportunity. It's like, what is this, and is this going to continue? So that's, I guess, what my point of this book is to go, hey, you're allowed to feel like this. Like, don't dismiss these emotions, because I think you have to listen to what your emotions are telling you. They're telling you about what's working in your life and what isn't, and what might need to be might need to be changed. Don't just become a grumpy old person. Like, you don't need it. Like, if you're grumpy now at 47.2, listen to that. You're allowed to be grumpy because that's telling you something, isn't it? It might be telling you that your hormones are out of whack. It might be telling you that you're not getting enough sleep. It might be telling you that there's a conversation you have to have with your boss at work. It might mean you need to start that new business and kind of, ease out of working for someone. Like, that grumpiness is telling you something. So use it, because it's telling you that there's something better for you that is in more alignment for you. So don't sit in the crises. Use it as a pivot or a catalyst for your own personal or even professional kind of growth.
That's a really important point that you touch on there, Marnie, because I know that I feel like it is shifting a little bit, but I know that it has been the case where particularly certain emotions on the spectrum of our human emotion experience
Mm,
have
mm,
been more frowned upon. And
yes.
so if we can change our point of view and be like, okay, well, this sadness, this frustration, this anger, this resentment, whatever it is
Mm,
actually a messenger for me to take some
exactly.
action to change something in my life.
Definitely. And they're chemical messengers, aren't they? These emotions. Don't dismiss them. Like, it's telling you, it's valuable information that's telling you about your place in the context of your life. And yeah, and society tells us that we're only supposed to be happy and, happiness, and, buy my stuff and you'll be happy, and it's all happy, happy, joy, joy. And you're allowed to show that. But, you know, um, you're really poo-pooed, aren't you, if you feel envious or jealous, or, keep that sadness to yourself, or, don't be angry, particularly if you're a woman. Like, don't
Mm-hmm.
ever be angry. But all of those, even jealousy and envy, like, it's telling you something, isn't it?
Absolutely. Give
So
yourself
listen.
permission to feel that full spectrum of emotion. And while we're talking about emotion in the
Hmm.
book, you also touch on happiness and how it's subjective. And
Yeah.
so I'd love you to just kind of unpick that a little bit for us, and what your thoughts are on creating happiness. And also, is that the only thing that we should be striving for in this life, or is there more to it?
Yeah, I mean, happiness is the peak, isn't it? That's what a lot of people want to be feeling, and yeah, I think society is telling us that it's happiness is all the way, but we're going to be sorely disappointed if it's unrealistic. I think, so I think if we're aiming just for happiness, we're going to be disappointed very quickly, or we're setting ourselves up for failure. Because and we all know, if we're living life to its fullest, it is challenging, isn't it? there's ups and downs. To be successful, you actually have to fail, and that doesn't feel very good. Light requires dark to really, like, you just need the ebb and flow of all different emotions to be able to feel happiness. So my point in the book is, we shouldn't be aiming for that. We should almost allow all of those emotions in and be content with what is at the moment, rather than resisting all those other emotions just because we need to feel happy. Because if you're not listening to the sadness and the anger and the irritability and the frustrations, then you're less likely to be happy, because you're not listening to those emotions that's telling you something about your life so that you can change it to be happy. So
That's so
happy,
true.
yeah. So that's why the point is contentment, and that is, I'm content with what is, and yeah. But what is this telling me about me and my life, and do I need to change something?
There's definitely that sense of polarity in everything in life,
Mm,
like you touched on, having the night and day of things, and that's how we know what the opposite is. So it's all
mm,
welcome and it's all
mm,
valid, and I
mm.
really love your encouragement with that. But you just touched on contentment there, and I'd
Yeah.
love for you to expand on that a little bit, because that is something else that you talk about in the book, rather than always aiming for happiness, but can we more so lean more into this contentment with what is in our life?
Yeah, I think contentment comes from the present moment. I think as well as whenever us people that are in the wellness or the wellbeing space talk about contentment, I think a lot of us think, oh, that's something else I need to chase and I need to find. And so you kind of future forward, aren't you? And you're looking for that. And you're searching for it everywhere. But I would say that contentment is just stop. Even in my previous book, which was on burnout and using that as a catalyst for growth, I actually say stop. Just stop and just learn to be present and listen to what's going on around you. And the same is with crisis to contentment, is just stop and listen to what's going around. Don't resist whatever emotion is happening at the moment, because contentment is just, I'm allowing what is just to be. And I really believe that's what it is.
Definitely. I think we can all benefit from having a little bit more presence and a little bit more contentment and acceptance with everything that's going on in our lives.
Mm,
But
yeah.
other than trying to cultivate this sense of contentment or just allowing that to be, what are some other tips or tricks or practices or guidance, I guess, that you would share with readers of the book and clients that you work with on how we can start to invite more of that in, invite more of that contentness, more of that happiness, and more of that awareness, I guess, of what's going on in our lives and how we can really start to listen to ourselves and our
Mm.
emotions a little bit more.
Yeah, you probably notice in my book is I think way too much. So, I'm always wondering or pondering on something, and like there's a lot of chit chat that goes on in my head. And I think we are at risk in such a busy society. Like I was saying before, there's so many hats, isn't there, that we have? There's so many roles that we have, gazillion things that a lot of us have to do. And I don't think a lot of us are taking enough space to just stop. So we're just being very reactive to how we feel rather than proactive. And to be proactive, it's almost, you've got to pluck yourself out of your life for a little bit, don't you? And it doesn't mean you have to go for 6 weeks and live in an ashram to figure this out at all. It just
Although you
means,
can if you want to.
well, that would be so nice. That is my mission to do that. And a lot of people don't get a lot of time off. I work with a lot of small business owners and things, and we don't even get the 4 weeks a year that a lot of other people get. So I would say the big one is to ritualize some sort of presence or moment just for yourself, even if it is for half an hour a day. Getting up half an hour earlier, or having some sort of ritual before bed, so you can just stop and just be body and mind present. because or ritualizing those moments where you are by yourself and you're just going for a walk, or so it's kind of like you're present, body and mind present, so that you can allow the information. So it allows you for your emotions to process, but it allows you to start thinking about what's next for you as well. So I would say first and foremost, yeah, ritualize some sort of present moment, me time, do nothing time, somewhere in your day that works best for you. And that would be my first one. And moving your body. It's amazing what brilliant ideas come when you're moving your body and also de-stressing at the same time. So, moving your body is an antidote to stress, isn't it? And I think a lot of cool ideas come when we're moving.
Absolutely. I can attest to those two things as well. Usually for me, things like to drop in when I'm doing my yoga practice. So I've had
Yes.
that experience
Yeah.
myself as well. Yeah, like you said, that's such a beautiful thing that we can do for ourselves, is to create this ritual, however it looks. We're all going to have,
Hmm.
a different lifestyle and different tastes in what we're interested in, but just creating some sort of ritual in our lives to allow that wisdom to come through from our body and our emotions and our mind as well.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And, to the point of, our mind and our emotions are telling us stuff. Also, in midlife, our body is telling us things as well. And I see far too many people with aches and pains and feeling fatigued, and they haven't had a checkup or talked to anyone about it. They've just kept going and kind of ignored those signs. So I would say if there's anything out of the ordinary, or you're too tired, or you're not feeling like you did, like 6 months ago, like really go to the professionals that you need to go to and just get the works. We live in modern times, so utilize the benefits of the right health professionals for you, because it gives you a bit of a overview of what needs, what might need some work, what might need some treatment, and then you've got more information, haven't you? You've got more and then you've got choice. You can go and you might need to do more exercise, you might need to eat differently, you might need to have different types of rituals that are going to actually make you feel better. So you know any body mind signals, listen to them.
And I think a lot of us, as we begin to age, there is a bit of a stigma or just an acceptance of certain things will start to happen with your body and your health and things
Mm.
like that, which to a degree is absolutely true. But I think people just can be a little bit too easy to accept it, rather than thinking, okay, there is actually practices and modalities and professionals that
Yes.
can actually help me with this to enhance my quality of life. So I'm really glad that you touched on that as well.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, don't ignore that. And to your point, there's so many, even outside of kind of traditional medicine, there are so many things that you could do to actually zhuzh up your body. And it's amazing. Like, and I do talk about this a little bit in my book, is that some of the people, well, many of the people that I've worked with that have come to me with the aches and pains and the kind of like, what's this all about? What's going on with my body? Why do I keep, falling over all over the place? Or why am I so tired all the time? And like, it's quite amazing through our conversations how they start realizing that they can take responsibility for themselves, and they're actually in more control of what's going on in that aging process than they actually thought they were. And then they go off on this pathway that ends up making them more healthy than they were before they were 47.2. So I've seen it as a massive catalyst, like women that are stronger than they've ever been, even stronger than they were like in their early 30s, because yeah, they just had enough. Had enough of how they were feeling, and they were like, no, I'm going to start, lifting weights or walking more or going to the gym or whatever they've been doing. So utilizing those aches and pains and not being happy with it as a catalyst for massive physical changes to the better.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful catalyst and an opportunity, like we were saying earlier in
Mm,
the conversation, like all of these challenging things that can come up during our lives, we can always use them as a catalyst and an opportunity for growth or to pivot or to, yeah, change something in our lives. There's always a blessing and there's always a
mm,
lesson in everything if we are open to receiving it. So I really
Yes.
loved that. In your book as well, I just wanted to touch on the fact that this really is a multifaceted thing, isn't it? Like, it's not just the body, like you've got little exercises and things in there as well
Mm.
to look at mind, to look at relationships, to look at a whole bunch of different things. So I was just wondering if you could speak into that a little bit more and share why that is important, not to just focus on one or two areas of our life, but we actually need to look at the whole picture.
Well, yeah, I really tried to tackle this holistically, but also learn from all the areas that I know I work with clients. Like, what are the main themes that come up when people are, yeah, kind of aging, and what are they coming to me for that they deem as a challenge? And yeah, it is the physical changes and the emotional changes. Yeah, I talk about mental changes as well. So cognitively, people, particularly women, are like, oh, I can't remember anything. Like, I just got brain fog all the time. So there's those sorts of changes. I don't feel like I'm as creative as I usually are. So there's like lots of kind of similar themes that come up under kind of cognitive changes. Then, of course, there's the relationship changes, what's going on in the home, what's going on with your family, what's going on with your parenting, what's going on with your parents as well. So there's those sorts of changes that happen in the decades of middle age as well. And I also talk about, yeah, how our social life changes and our career changes and our hobbies and our extracurricular activities change, or they don't even seem to exist for a few decades as well. And I also talk about kind of global changes as well and how we're reacting to that. So I really kind of carved it out into lots of different areas and thought, hey, this is what we need to start thinking about, is that we're reacting to all of these different changes that are happening to us every day. And I just tried to kind of really put them into kind of different compartments to get people to kind of think about how they're thinking about these things. Why could they be feeling that? And is there some things that they could possibly do to change it? So it might be, yeah, I'm not happy in my workplace. What is that about? Why are you not happy? Because otherwise it's just a generalized, I'm just grumpy when I get home from work, isn't it? Not really thinking about what aspects of work. Is it colleagues? Is it your boss? Is it the work itself? Are you not reaching your potential? Like, what is it? And then that gives you a powerful it gives you powerful information, doesn't it, to tell you why you're feeling a certain way about something. And then you can start thinking about what you can do about it. So I try and do that in every chapter. I'm feeling like this because of this, and these are the things that I could possibly do to actually make it better.
Absolutely. And it really does invite us to have this sense of self-inquiry, doesn't it? Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we're the only ones that can do anything about anything in our lives. It's all up to us if we need to make some changes, if we're not happy, if we want to change careers or our relationship or whatever is going on for us. At the end of the day, it is up to us, and we need to take that self-inquiry time and the self-responsibility to then action it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of us will be waiting a very long time for somebody else to come and say, hey, I've noticed this about you, and perhaps we could do this or help out. Like, that often is not going to happen. So yeah, once you realize that you have more responsibility and more control than you thought you had, it's a really pivotal moment.
And it's such a powerful thing too, an empowering thing for us to do for ourselves, to take that action and to get into the driver's seat of our lives as well.
Oh, exactly, exactly. And that power, when we've achieved something, that when our self-efficacy, so that's our ability to, or our belief in our ability to do something or achieve something, there's nothing like that feeling. Because then that's the engine, isn't it? That's the power that drives the next thing that you want to achieve. So, throughout the book, even if someone walks away with one little thing that they can take on board and do differently, you'll increase your confidence and your ability to do something else that you want to change. And it's more powerful than somebody else going, hey, here's some help. It's usually, yeah, more powerful if you can do it yourself.
That's what I was going to say too, that you just touched on, that it does give you that sense of confidence once you've done something for
Yeah.
yourself or made the change or implemented something, then it does give you the confidence to say, okay, well, I did that, or I achieved that. So
Yes.
now that gives me a good foundation to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, definitely. So it doesn't have to be all at once, because I think a lot of people, you get bombarded, don't you, when you start realizing all the changes that you have to make. And then you're like, a lot of people just go into that all or nothing mode and go, nah, to hell with it. I'm not doing anything. But I would say, just if there's one thing that rings true, just and it excites you when you think about the change, start with that one first. Leave all the other stuff till later. Just start with that one. Do something fun first that
Yeah.
excites you.
Do something fun and something that you know that you will actually do. And then you
Yeah.
can, yeah, just one thing at a time, because it can be really overwhelming, like you said as well.
Yes, definitely.
Marnie, this has been wonderful. We've touched on so many things so far to help everyone in midlife and outside of those brackets to get a little bit more aligned with where they are now and where they want to go. But I just wanted to, as we prepare to close out our conversation, is there anything that we haven't touched on yet that you would like to talk about, or any final words of wisdom that you'd love to impart with our listeners?
Oh, I mean, I could talk about this all day long, so we'd be here for me for many hours. But I would just say that, those people that grew up in my era, which is, like the kind of mainly the 80s. We're a fine bunch, us Gen Xers. Yeah, and I just think, yeah, a lot of us, and probably a lot of your listeners, have grown up in simpler times, it seems. And I think, we're trying to keep up with, the fast paced world that we live in. And I think, a lot of us have a lot on our plate. So just, take it slow, take more time for yourself, and, have a lot of self compassion, because I think that's missing a lot of the time with a lot of grown adults in the modern world. Yeah, giving ourselves a hard time way too much.
I love that, self compassion, and just be kind to yourself. That's such beautiful words to leave our listeners with. So, we've got a copy of your book here, Crisis to Contentment. So, if you haven't grabbed a copy of that, make sure you go out and get that from all good bookstores. But, Marnie, where else can our listeners connect with you and work with you as well?
Well, I'm all over social media, so you can find me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on my website. So it's marnylishman.com.au, and books are in my all good bookstores or online.
Amazing. Marnie, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom with myself and the listeners today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I loved this conversation with Marnie, sharing so much of her wisdom and experience and wit as well as we move through these more challenging times of our lives. So make sure you grab a hold of Marnie's book if you haven't already, Crisis to Contentment. You can grab a copy of that wherever you can find books, online and in store. Make sure you jump over and connect with Marnie as well. Her website is marnylishman.com.au, and you can also connect with Marnie on Instagram at Marny Lishman. Come over to Instagram as well and connect with me. My handle is at BeckRussell_, and you can let Marnie and myself know what you loved about this conversation and what some of your key takeaways were and what you're going to implement into your life, or some areas that you might take some inspiration to be able to cultivate a little bit more happiness, a little bit more contentness, and also to take any opportunities for growth and expansion and to pivot in those more challenging times of our lives. As always, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast. And until next time, take really good care of yourself, and I'll chat to you again soon.